Are we on? There we go. Here we go. Welcome everybody to the J&J Sports Express for the wild card weekend of the 2024 NFL season as we get underway. As usual, I'm your host Jeff Cadillac with my co-host J.B. Ellis. J.B., how are you tonight?
Doing good. So we're in the playoffs already. It seemed like this season just started.
Yeah, it just flew by, as in the blink of an eye. And we got a lot of exciting games for everybody. We got the 6 games this weekend. They should be exciting to watch, but we'll discuss it as we get to it. So let's look at the first game. It's split up. The first game is actually on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time. You got number 5, the Los Angeles Chargers, at number 4, Houston Texans. Who do you like in this and why? Houston's getting 2.5 in this at home, but JB, who do you like?
It's an interesting matchup. Neither one of these teams is going to win the Super Bowl. One of these teams will get to play next week, and that'll probably be it. Do you go with Harbaugh and Herbert, or do you go down to the Houston Texans with DeMeco Ryans and their young CJ Stroud? This is a compelling game. This is probably the best game of the weekend as far as matchup wise. I think these teams have matched up really well. It's a tough one. I'm going to go with Harbaugh. I mean, considering he's won a national championship and got to a Super Bowl, he's got a lot of experience when it comes to must-win games. I think that's why the Chargers are getting the points here. Talent-wise, I think they're somewhat close. If the Chargers play their best game, I think they're a little bit better of a team on paper. But I could see this game going either way, but I'm going to go with the coaching edge for the Chargers to give them the win by a field goal.
Well, I happen to agree with you about the Chargers, but I like them for different reasons. I don't like the way Houston's been playing in the last half of the season. They've basically been limping around, not beating anybody convincingly. And CJ Stroud, the quarterback for Houston, has definitely looked like he's regressed a little. That to me is a big worrisome going into the playoffs. We all knew they had a tougher schedule this season than they did last season because last season was a big surprise. They got off to that nice start. They ended up nicely. They actually beat Cleveland in the first round of the playoffs. Then they lost big time to Baltimore. This year they had a big, tougher schedule. They didn't beat anybody convincingly. They beat Buffalo 1 week. I believe it was week 5. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the thing was they beat Buffalo by 3 points because Buffalo decided that at the end of the game, they decided to be a team that didn't know how to play the game, no time management. I remember that game very well. And, Houston escaped with the win. But over the course of the season, there's nothing that really tells me that this team is going anywhere. They have some fine players, Will Anderson on defense, Stingley in cornerback. You got a few other players that are very good. Mixon definitely helps out with C.J. Stroud in the backfield, but Stroud has made some definite big mistakes. On the other side, you got the Chargers. I like what Jim Harbaugh brings to the table. The defense has been playing a lot better. They have to step it up for these playoffs. Herbert cannot, he has to rely on his wide receivers. The running back should give him some extra oomph, which takes a lot of pressure off of him. But I see this game is a tighter match, and I do like the Chargers winning by a touchdown or a field goal. I like laying the 2.5 to Houston as the home dog, but I like the Chargers winning by at least 3 or more.
All right, so we got 5 more games. How many more will we agree? That is the question. We're already 1 for 1. We don't agree very often, and Jeff is excellent at what he does, but no one is perfect. And we both had pretty good years here, so it'll be interesting to see the next game. We're going to go to Baltimore. We got the Ravens minus 9.5 against Russell Wilson and his Pittsburgh Steelers. You want to start with this one?
Okay. You got the 6th seed. The Steelers are at the number 2 seed, Baltimore. Baltimore has a chip on their shoulder, first of all, from last season, getting the number 1 seed and losing at home in the championship against Kansas City. So they were already pissed off to begin with, and they're on a mission. Now Pittsburgh comes into town. They've lost 4 in a row, and Russell Wilson looks like he's kind of regressed himself. He's played horribly. The numbers don't tell it all. He's had 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but he's had 3 lost fumbles. He had a pick 6 against Baltimore, which basically lost that game. He lost a game. He didn't play well against Kansas City. Last week against Cincinnati, didn't play as well. He's not looking that good. Baltimore, come on. It's going to be the Derrick Henry show and Lamar Jackson in this one. And these teams first, they met twice during the season. In the first game, Pittsburgh found a way to win and won 18-16 because Baltimore couldn't figure it out. I could tell you this week, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Henry's going to run for 150 yards. Add on Lamar Jackson for another 30 or 40, maybe even 50 yards. And it's going to be lights out. The problem that I have for Baltimore is Zay Flowers. He's out. Definitely out this week with his knee. He'll probably be back for the divisional round. Baltimore has other receivers that Lamar Jackson could throw to. It's not like he just, started as the quarterback there. He knows the offense. These teams know each other. I'm not crazy about Russell Wilson. They totally folded at the end of the season with the 4 straight losses. The spread is 9.5. I think the Ravens win by 2 touchdowns in this game. I think their defense and their offense, they're on a mission, and they got to get to the next round. And the last game they won 34-17 against the Steelers. I could see that as a repeat this week.
Division games, whether they're in the playoffs or regular season, are tough games. On paper, everything points to the Ravens. The Steelers are playing horrible. They're limping into the playoffs. They look disgusting, but here we are. Mike Tomlin, another 10-win season with nobody on offense and a phenomenal defense. He just gets his guys to play. Now, Lamar Jackson, unfortunately, hasn't been very good in the playoffs. He was the number 1 seed. You mentioned that last year. They lost at home. Year before that was horrible. They brought in Derrick Henry, which is going to help them. That was a great move, and this is why, for the playoffs, to take some of the pressure off Lamar. But, again, I'm going to go with the coaching thing. Tomlin doesn't get to go out there and play offense. So I don't think the offense is going to be the key. Baltimore is going to win the game, but you're getting almost 10 points with the Steelers. I just don't see the Ravens all of a sudden learning how to take care of teams in the playoffs and Lamar going out there and, becoming a superstar. Now, I think this helps them because they will get a win, and that'll relax them for the next game. And we'll talk about next week's game next week. But when it's all said and done, you're going to give me 9.5 points with a really good defense and one of the best coaches in the NFL. I'm going to take it 9 times out of 10. Once again, I don't think they're winning this game. I'm not saying it's going to be an upset, but this is a good layup for Lamar to get his playoff started. The Steelers' defense will do whatever they can to keep it close, but that offense just can't score enough points. And now you put Derrick Henry in that backfield, and you're going to have to see a big day from Likely and the other tight end in order for Baltimore to do well. I think that's going to be key to see how Andrews and Likely do. I think they're going to make a huge difference in why Baltimore is going to win this game. But, I'll take the 9.5, and I think the Steelers make it look good on paper, but I don't think it's going to be a fun game to watch. And I want to say, I don't know why the NFL did this to us on Saturday night, because we're going to be sitting there pretty it's the Steelers or Ravens. There was much better games to put in this situation, but I'm going to take the Steelers. Give me the points, and I think the Ravens pull out a tight win by maybe about 5 or 6 here.
Okay. So we go to Sunday. The 3 games on Sunday. The first game is the 7 seed Denver at the number 2 seed Buffalo. Buffalo is home, laying 8.5. I'll start off on this one. Broncos, they had a nice season. Their defense, unfortunately, down the stretch escaped them. It got worse as the season started to get into the real depth of the season at the end. Bo Nix has had a really good season. I wouldn't put any money on that game that they had against Kansas City last week. They were playing basically against backups. It was a game they needed. I liked Kansas City plus 11. I thought Carson Wentz and the team would show up, but he was basically playing with a bunch of, nobodies. really nobody's. There was every star you could think of on Kansas City had rested. Buffalo is also another team that's on the mission. Last season, they had the game at home against Kansas City in the playoffs. They lost. It's Kansas City or Baltimore that's going to end up playing Kansas City. I'm sorry, Baltimore or Buffalo, one of those teams that's going to end up playing Kansas City. But for this game, Buffalo's, don't look into the loss against New England. Again, they had their starters and guys rested. They weren't looking to get injured or anything like that. I love James Cook in the backfield. He gives that extra added run game to Buffalo. Buffalo, again, is on a mission. They're the number 2 seed for a reason. And I like them laying 8.5. As much as you like about Denver, and Denver's up and coming, they're a team that also their running game is stagnant. Bo Nix is usually always not always, but usually the leading rusher every week, which is a recipe for disaster. I like Buffalo to step it up at home, and Buffalo wins by at least 10 points in this game.
Real quick question before I break it down. Are you surprised that the Ravens are giving up 9.5 to the Steelers and the Bills are only 8.5 to the Broncos?
Not really, because I think Pittsburgh is missing a few things, because if Russell Wilson is not the quarterback he used to be in the last 4 games, the stats don't tell it. The stats look pretty good, but, it's key little mistakes here and there that have basically cost the games.
It surprises me. I mean, I figured the Bills would be about 10.5, 11. At 8.5, taking the Bills all day. Like you said, last week's loss to New England meant nothing to them. There was no difference whether they won or lost that game. They were going to be the 2 seed. While on the other hand, reverse for Denver, they needed to win last week, and they played nobody on Kansas City. Kansas City played all of their bench, and they played like it when they got destroyed. So I don't take anything from either team's win or loss. I look back at the year's worth of work. Buffalo's big problem is their head coach. He cost them a couple of games and the chance at the 1 seed with horrible clock management throughout the year. The game in Houston being one example. There was a couple of other. This team went out there and beat the 2 number 1 seeds. They beat Kansas City and they beat Detroit. They're going to be on a mission, like you said. Their season, how far they go is all going to depend on when they play Kansas City. If they can beat them when they get to that point. I don't think the Broncos are going to be able to put much of a fight up this week. I think it actually works to Buffalo's advantage that the Broncos got the playoff spot. Rather than the Dolphins and or Bengals. I think the Bengals could have been a tougher matchup. The Broncos, they are used to cold weather, so that's not going to be an issue. It's not like as if the Dolphins got there and they don't win in 20-degree temperature. But Josh Allen, my opinion, MVP this year. We'll see who gets it. A couple of guys in that race. Lamar's one of them. Cook has been phenomenal. Look for Curtis Samuel, hopefully, to step up. I think he could be a key guy in that offense. They have a couple of nice receivers, even after they got rid of Diggs last year. They don't have any superstars right now at wide receiver, but they got a couple of nice pieces. And Allen is not afraid. He just will go out there and take the game by himself and start running. Defense leaves a little bit to be desired, but they're playing Denver, who does not have a prolific offense. It's basically the Bo Nix show. He, did what I expected him to do. Maybe in year 2. I think he's a year ahead of where I saw him. Glad with how he's playing. He's definitely doing well for Denver, but they don't have a good running game. Sutton's their number 1 receiver. Doesn't really scare me too much. I don't see their offense being able to keep up with the Buffalo offense. I think Buffalo wins by 2 touchdowns here.
Good. So I agree with that. Okay, you're going to number 7 seed Green Bay Packers at the number 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are favored by 4.5. Take it away, JB.
So this was a rematch of Game 2 of the NFL season in Brazil. The
Game
Packers, Game 2 because Game 1 was on Week 1, but Game 2 because Game 1 was on Thursday night. So the Packers played them in Brazil. In the game where nobody was allowed to wear green because it was a scary thing for the the gangs in Brazil, but somebody still wore green. But the Eagles pulled away with a victory. They got a one-score victory. The Packers were in until the end. Jordan Love did get hurt on the last play of the game. And they had to use Malik Willis to get some key victories this year to get them into the playoffs. Jordan Love got healthy and played really well. Packers are an interesting team. They are years ahead of where I expected them as far as a rebuild went after get rid of Rodgers. I got to give Matt LaFleur a lot of credit for keeping his team focused and playing well and being the third best team in the best division in football. Most of their losses came to Minnesota and Detroit. You can't be upset when those are the teams you're losing to, because combined they had, the fewest losses in football pretty much. But this is where their luck's going to run out. It looks like, Hurts is going to play. They got a dark horse MVP candidate in Saquon Barkley, the ninth running back in history to run for 2,000 yards. Didn't get a chance at the rushing record because they sat him out. The Eagles are a team, in my mind, that feels that nobody is looking at them and they're not getting any respect to win the NFC because everyone's looking at Detroit, especially after they beat Minnesota to end the season. I think the Eagles are going to just take it to the Packers from start to finish, and going to be an ugly game. And it's not that the Packers aren't a good team, because they had a good year, but the Eagles are in that next level of teams. I don't think the Eagles are complete, but I think that they're up there in that top echelon of teams. And I just think that their offense, when firing on all cylinders, is better than most offenses in the NFL. Jordan Love has done a great job distributing the ball to his wide receivers. He's got a couple of nice good wideouts. He uses Dobbs, Reed, and a few of the other guys. He distributes the ball really well, so it's hard to know who to guard. They did a great job bringing in Josh Jacobs. I think this team is going to be an issue for years to come, but I think their season ends in Philadelphia, and I think the Eagles are on a mission.
Well, I agree with you, and thanks for that. I was like, is this going to end? Okay, when do I get my turn? I'm kidding. But first of all, one of the Packers wide receivers, Watson, he's out for this game. Christian Watson is definitely out, and that's a big impact on the game as well. Ari Alexander, cornerback, he's out for the season. Those are two big right there. Jordan Love, you know what? I like him. Unfortunately, he makes mistakes at untimely times. He banged up his elbow in a meaningless game against Chicago in Week 18. Malik Willis came in. He got a little banged up as well. Philadelphia's on a mission. They're looking to get back. After last year's collapse in the season and then the first round loss at Tampa, I think they're, and Saquon Barkley, come on, you can't say enough about this guy. This guy, I like that they, look, the record is the record for him rushing, and it's not a big deal, but ultimately it's winning the championship. And Philadelphia could be in the mix, at the end of the season, because they have a great defense. They have a great offense. Jalen Hurts is going to be playing this week, so he's had a nice rest, unfortunately, from the concussion that he received against Washington. And he's back at practice. I like the Eagles. The Packers, of course, they met in week one at Brazil. Eagles won that game. Eagles didn't figure it out at that time because they started out the season 2-2, but they really got things rolling at a certain point in the season, and they realized just stick to the basics and just roll over people. And that's what they did. And I like Philly here. I think they have unfinished business. I like them getting to maybe even the championship game, depending on who, what Minnesota does this week. We'll see what happens, but I like Philly. I like them winning by at least a touchdown in this game at home. Place is going to be wild, and that's the middle game on Sunday.
Sunday night, Commanders at Tampa, -3. You want to start this one?
Okay. Washington has had a nice comeback season, you could say, for the franchise. They lost some games, though. They lost against Baltimore. They lost against Pittsburgh. They've lost against some tough competition. They lost against Philly. They did beat Philly, but they did knock Jalen Hurts out of the game with a concussion. And I feel that strongly if he had not been knocked out, Washington would not have won that game. Washington's defense is suspect at best. They have played, they barely, they beat Atlanta. They had to go to overtime just to beat Atlanta. And, Atlanta's not this, offensive juggernaut that could just score points at will. And they seem at times that their defense can't really stop opposing offenses. I like Jaden Daniels a lot. I think he's got a big future in the NFL. He's had a very good season and everything. But the Bucs are going to be ready for that. They got the number 4 rushing defense in the NFL. Baker Mayfield also has he has Bucky Irving and Rashad White behind him, so he doesn't have to pass the ball on every down. But Tampa Bay is a juggernaut themselves because there's games that they should have won, and there's games that they did win. They beat Philly. They beat Detroit. I mean, these are top-tier teams, but meanwhile, they lost to Atlanta 2 times. So, sometimes they have lapses, but you have to keep winning. You can't just kind of like say to yourselves, all right, I beat the Carolinas of the world, or I beat New Orleans and to get into the playoffs. You got to consistently beat good teams. But Mike Evans, he's a great receiver. This guy catches everything. He's like glue. I'll tell you something. I like the Bucs. The Commanders had a nice season. Next season's going to be tough for them because they had such a great season this season. So next season they're going to have a tough schedule. I like Tampa Bay at home laying 3 points. I see this game, Tampa Bay winning by 7.
So this will be an interesting game. I mean, record-wise, Washington had the better record, but that doesn't mean much when you're playing now. They still got to go on the road because Tampa won their division. Daniels had a phenomenal year, 25 touchdowns and 9 picks. Baker, 41 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, and he's got Mike Evans back. They did a nice little thing where they got him his yards so he could get that record at the end of the game to end the season, which was a nice way to end the year. It's a tough game. I agree with you. Washington defense is a little suspect. To me, I think this game comes down to, does Baker make the plays and not throw the ball away? Because he has a history of throwing bad interceptions. Jaden Daniels doesn't scare me with that. I don't see him losing the ball. I'm going to say Baker plays a great game, and Bucky Irving has another big game at running back, a guy that nobody really thought of at the beginning of the year because it was Rashad White's job. But Bucky Irving has stepped in and done a great job there, taking over the lead back role and basically stealing Rashad White's job. Washington, a lot to be proud of this year. They've done a lot of great things. Good pick on their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, phenomenal. Had a great year. Definitely, in my opinion, rookie of the year. We'll see, what happens in this game, but I'm going to go with Tampa by a touchdown. I think Baker plays a clean game this week at least, and I think that's just enough to get the Bucs by the Commanders. I think their defense is just a drop better, but it'll be interesting. It's probably one of the better games I'm more excited to watch. Last game, the Vikings at Rams. It may be moved to Arizona at a neutral site depending on the wildfires. We were notified by the NFL yesterday. They will try their best to keep it at SoFi, but they've already decided that Glendale is the backup option if the air quality is no good or if the fires come too close to SoFi. So if you want to go first, tell me if it makes a difference if the game is in Glendale, and then, your analysis.
Well, I don't think it really makes a difference because the Rams always seem to have opposing fans in their stadium. They somehow, fill the stadium with opposing fans, not as many Ram fans. But I will tell you this. I like the Vikings and the Rams met earlier in the season on Thursday night, and the Rams beat the Vikings 30-20, which was a big surprise. The Vikings are coming off that loss. Excuse me. The Vikings are coming off that loss against Detroit on Sunday night. They had problems in the red zone. Detroit really stepped it up. Analazone was in there, the defensive back. He came back. He made a lot of key stops. Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell, they're going to make adjustments. They're going to make the changes they need to make because they know that being 0 for 4 in the red zone is not going to win any games anytime soon. The Rams, we all know about Puka, Nakua, and Cup. Those guys, Minnesota is really going to be watching these guys big time. Stephon Gilmore, cornerback for Minnesota, he has to step up. I mean, Minnesota does make plays. They make interceptions. This is going to be a tight game. You're talking about two factors playing for the Vikings in this game. One, they're off the bounce-back loss against Detroit, and two, they lost against the Rams earlier in the season. So they have two big factors that are playing inside their minds right now as to how they're going to play this game. They cannot do what they did against the Rams earlier in the season. They can't just, pass the ball, run the ball, and then just keep throwing at Justin Jefferson. Sam Darnold and the offense have to spread it out like they did throughout the season, and that's how they won these games. And they need to do that. For the Rams, again, the defense sometimes, they beat the Rams beat the Buffalo Bills in a shootout. And that game could have gone really either way. But then they struggled against the Jets. They struggled against Arizona. They struggled against San Francisco. I mean, which team is going to really show up? And you can't struggle against Minnesota because if you give them good, field position, you're going to just jam it down your throat. Aaron Jones is going to get through. The Rams' defensive line is not the greatest in the league. It's not like you're talking about, and the Vikings have the number 2 rushing defense, and I think they're going to really step it up. Look, after a loss, a team regroups. They look at things, what they did wrong the week before, and they said, you know what, we're going to do things differently this week. And the worst thing that could have happened for the Rams is that the Vikings lost last week because now they're going to evaluate everything. If the Vikings had won and they happen to be playing the Rams this week, the Vikings wouldn't reevaluate everything because they worked. But when you lose the way they did and they got blown out by Detroit, you reevaluate everything on the team and how you can improve it. And that's one of the factors. It's a bad factor that's helping the Vikings, but it's hurting the Rams. And the Rams, Matthew Stafford, you put pressure on him, the offense goes nowhere. But I like the Vikings on Monday night covering the spread, later 1.5. Vikings move on as the number 5. And the Rams, they had a nice season. They'll build from there.
So, no one expected the Rams to win the NFC West. If they did, I think they're lying because, everyone thought San Francisco would repeat. Great job by McVay there getting his team where they were this year. They did a phenomenal job. But, luck's going to run out. And it's kind of funny. Aaron Jones is a little banged up. And Minnesota is starting to use Cam Akers at running back a little bit more to spell Jones. Be kind of ironic if Cam Akers goes back to L.A. and, gives a little death blow to the Rams. But I do like the Vikings here. I think offensively they have a unit. When they have Darnold, who's had his best year of his career and is, showed he knows how to play quarterback. Forget about last game. That game was lost by coaching, not going for the field goal to start that second half. So forget about Darnold's performance there. I'm not going to take any fault on him on that one. So give that into a fact. Aaron Jones has been a huge pickup. He's had a great year for him. Cam Akers was running the ball well as the backup running back when he really hasn't run the ball well for the Rams previously. They got Jefferson and Addison. Their tight end is starting to look solid after he came back from injury mid-year. Their defense is the number 2 rushing defense. They have everything that it takes to be considered one of the better teams. The only thing that they have is they haven't beat Detroit this year. Those were the 2 big losses. And if they would have won one of those games, they were the number 1 seed. But they didn't. But they're going to win this week. I think they win by a touchdown. They lost the last game because of a bad call, and you can't blame the officials. They could have done other things to win it. Rams will put up a little bit of a fight, though, but 1.5 is, easy money on the Vikings here. I think they win by a touchdown. Look for Nakua to have a good game as well for the Rams. So real quick, before we get to where we can find us, you any interest in the college football playoffs this weekend?
Not really. I don't. it's a crapshoot, and I haven't really been following it. Been busy with the NFL up to this point.
Just always room for Notre Dame, bro. Always room for Notre Dame. They got a big game against Penn State tonight. I like the Irish winning that one. Unfortunately, Ohio State's going to beat Texas, and it's going to be probably an Ohio State champion. Yuck. But anyway, where can people find you?
You can find me at jeffcadillac.com. I have all the listings, all the analysis for all the games already posted on my site. You can find me on Twitter for the best bet of the wild card playoffs on Friday at Jeff Cadillac 1. And you can find me here every week with you, JB, on the J&J Sports Express, all throughout the Super Bowl.
So this has been the wild card edition of the J&J Sports Express. You can find me here, obviously, usually on Wednesdays, but this week we went on Thursdays. Thursday. Sideline Sports every Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. WGJY 99.1 in Atlanta on Wednesdays. Alumni Media, Believe is also where you can find the Sideline Sports show. We will be on Radio Row Sideline Sports for the third consecutive year. So we'll be there all week. We'll be there on opening night to get to interview all the players. We'll be at all the press conferences. We'll have you covered throughout the playoffs here with Jeff and I. Make sure you tune it in. Click subscribe, like the show. Don't forget to check out his best bet of the week tomorrow. Tomorrow. Today's Thursday. And you can see who's going to win because he's pretty good at that best bet thing. But until next week, enjoy the games. Let's go Notre Dame tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.